All right, mic check, good. So I'm Max Ceron, CWBA Association Welding Podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, Welding Podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWBA Association Podcast. My name is Max Ceron and I'm here with Sean Flottmann, a fantastic person that I got to meet at FabTech this year, which feels like it was a million years ago already. It's amazing how time flies, and we're gonna have a great time, man. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing well. I'm glad that we were able to get this together. And it does seem like, typically we're just getting ready for FabTech, but it's already been, 6 weeks ago already now?
In some ways, I look at it and it's like, oh, it wasn't that long ago, 5-6 weeks, big deal. But I feel like after you come back from something like that, you're so much busier. Like you pick up a lot of work at something like that.
Yeah, a lot of leads and networking goes on. That was one of the biggest benefits. I guess that's the fourth year I've been going now since we missed last year.
Mm-hmm.
And, getting across the table, shaking hands, it's one thing to be able to interact with people through Instagram, Facebook messaging and everything, but that only gives you, kind of gets your foot in the door, basically. It's really nice to get to actually meet people face to face, see how they legitimately conduct themselves out in public. And, it's a lot harder to put on a front when you're actually meeting someone versus, this persona that some people tend to build online. So it's a really neat escape. And then very cool to just be surrounded by nothing but like-minded people and industry-driven, fabricators, welders, engineers, all walks of life, all interested in the same things I am. It's pretty neat.
That's I always try to play that card because my online persona is super lame, like super lame. Like it's literally my car, my turtle, my wife, my kids. Like there's not a little bit of welding here, even though I'm like almost welding or doing something welding related every single like waking moment of my day. I don't put a lot of that online. I feel like people are gonna get bored of it, but then people meet me in person and they're like, "Oh, you actually do weld? Like you actually do stuff." It's not just about your turtle.
That's the only card I have to play. That's the only interesting facet of my life. So that's just my go-to.
All right, Sean, I want to figure out about you. I got to meet you. It was a very, rushed, busy setting. And I know you do a lot of interviews, you do a lot of podcasts. And so, people that are listening to this show probably know quite a bit about you already. So I'm going to try to cut through a little bit of the fat there and a little bit of the grease. So let's start with the basics. Where were you born?
I was born in St. Louis, but I actually grew up in Gerald, Missouri. So about an hour west of St. Louis, out in the sticks, a little bitty town, out in the country. I think there's probably 600 or 700 people that are from my hometown. So
what's that hometown do? Like, what's the industry around there? What did they do, your parents?
My parents were, my dad was a dispatcher for a local trucking company, and then my mom did sales for them. So basically they were both in, trucking, over the road trucking for, most of my childhood.
So did your dad drive at all or just work dispatch?
He drove whenever he was younger. My grandpa actually started the company years and years ago after the war, delivering ice, and then it wound up becoming a full-blown trucking company after that. And then my father worked for it after he sold it, and then continued to work there until it was sold, and my father eventually retired. So
it was like it was in the family a long time.
For quite some time, yeah. So I'm kind of an outlier. I stepped out of the transit business, though it does work very well, having a very good knowledge now that I'm traveling with work now. So it all it's funny how all the different facets of your life fall together for different positions throughout your life. So it is pretty cool.
Nothing ever goes to waste, man. Nothing ever goes to waste.
That's for sure.
So then you're growing up in a small town. How'd you like small town life? Did you think that it was cool, or did you think, I want to get the hell out of here, move to the city? My wife's from a small town. She couldn't wait to get out of the small town and move to the city, but not everyone's like that.
It depended in different periods of your life. As a little boy, it was the greatest shit ever. you know, because you could go out in the woods. We had, you know, guns at our disposal. You got away with anything because we're in the middle of nowhere, you know, out rabbit hunting, squirrel hunting. You know, you can do legitimately whatever you want. Tearing apart bicycle frames and stick welding when we're 10, 11, and 12, you know, just out doing country stuff. The older I got, though, as you become a teenager and are looking for things to do and girls to chase and things like that, you know, I obviously wanted to get a little out of the country and try my hand at some city life and stuff like that as well. But for growing up, I wouldn't have traded my childhood for anything else, for sure, you know.
That's awesome. Were you pretty tight with your parents?
Oh yeah, still am very tight with my parents, absolutely.
Awesome. You got brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I've got an older sister and a younger brother, so I'm the infamous middle child.
Oh, you're the forgotten one.
No, I was the Hellraiser. You know, I was the one looking for attention, so I had to get it.
So, you know, in a small town, what was it like for you to go to school? Was there, you know, was it a pretty big school? Lots of people got bussed in, or were you in a small school?
No, everybody from all the surrounding towns, we all had our own individual grade schools, but then everybody got bussed into Owensville for the high school. And let's see, I guess my graduating class was right about 100 students. So,
Okay,
you know,
that's a
400
decent
students.
size.
I think we were a 3A school in Missouri. So that's kind of middle of the road, but you know, that's obviously because they bust a lot of kids in from all the smaller, very rural areas.
Yeah. So, like, was there much of a trades program in your high school? Like, sometimes the
We
small
got
schools will have lots.
we had a pretty active ag program, obviously, just because there's so much farmland and stuff like that around. But then they were bussed in to Rolla for the VOTEC program there, you know, kind of the career training center. But in high school, I was not interested in welding at all, really. My main focus was black and white photography, journalism, and music.
Hmm.
You
So,
know, so my
well,
welding
so
interest really happened later in life, you know, just kind of by happenstance, honestly.
well, you know, I totally see the connections, and, you know, looking back at people's lives, and, you know, whoever, you can see how the art ends up coming out sooner or later. Like, you can't
Yeah.
keep the art buried for too long.
Uh-huh.
But you know, photography, I loved photography as a kid. I still love photography. I think a lot of what I do now is sort of those interests with media, whether it's music or pictures or movies. You know, I was a musician. I played guitar. You know, what was your instrument of choice, or were you more of on the recording
I was a
side? Or
drummer. I started out playing trumpet, piano, very, very rudimentary, you know, as a child,
Mhm.
and never really blossomed into a musician until I switched over to the drums. That would have been eighth grade year, and then played heavily in marching band, then jazz band, and then of course was, you know, in a rock band and stuff through high school, and shortly thereafter, you know, playing the bar scenes and stuff. So it was. That's often what I try to refer to people that takes the same kind of mechanics to play a drum set as it does the TIG weld. You know, you have to have independent use of all of your different appendages all, you know, the same time, and a lot of times keeping some kind of rhythm or tempo,
Mhm.
you know, so it's quite parallel. And once again, one skill developed for one thing that correlated directly into something else, you know.
So were you a
They
good?
weren't paying much money to play drums, so I'm glad that that skill set translated into something I was able to actually put food on the table, you know.
Were you a good drummer?
You know, we were very good in high school, and I mean, I wasn't great on the our band, you know, that we played local bars, and it was nothing fantastic, but for you know, making a couple $100 on a Friday night, we got the job done. Absolutely.
Awesome. So what was the name of your band? Was it a? Tell me, I hope it's a really cool name.
What was it? Damn if I know.
Damned if I know.
Dan Fino, yeah, like you're saying, damned if I know, real fast.
Damn fine. Okay. I like that. That's pretty cool. You guys did
And
like
I think there
covers and
was
stuff?
Pandemonium, and there was a couple. You know, there was as many names as there was Rolling Stone members that were in and out of the group. It was never anything too concrete. It was just whoever we could get to show up and jam for, you know, a few sets or whatever.
And what about your love of photography? Did that go away, or have you always kind of kept that going?
Well, I mean, obviously that would, you know, be my constant obsession with always posting on Instagram. Um, Obviously, it's turned into a lot more videography anymore. But I mean, that definitely played into being able to get all the right shots and the correct angles for different videos and stuff like that. So once again, it's a skill that was not intended for what I'm doing now, but has come in quite handy, further on down the road here.
I'd be interested to see some of your black and white shots. You still don't do anything black and white, like just for hobby?
No, I haven't done anything. See, when I was doing black and white, it was still all like dark room and the full chemical process and everything. So that was that was the real bummer right when I graduated in '98. That's kind of when the digital revolution was coming through. So the darkroom skills that I really enjoyed, everyone was just doing backflips over all this digital stuff now. So it was, kind of a skill that I developed that I felt there was really no use for other than, well, just what music had become after high school. I really enjoyed playing the drums, but it was not a means to an end of any sort that I ever saw. There was not going to be food put on the table by my black and white photography or me playing the drums. Unfortunate, as much as I would have wished either one would have panned out, I did not see either of those in my cards.
Yeah. What kind of work were you doing then? Right out of high school, you're playing with your band. What kind of work were you doing?
Well, through high school, I had to make a job. So that was actually, I was going to go to college and started attending college for business management. So I was getting college credit for being a manager at McDonald's. That was like the only corporate restaurant available that you could get credit from in the town of Owensville. So it was basically the only choice I had. But that worked out. So I started going to East Central, like I said, for a business management degree. And that's how I got my first taste into welding. Was just a temporary while I was attending college there. So luckily my McJob led me to welding in kind of a roundabout way.
And then you're in college. How did that connection to welding occur? You're in business, and then did you just pick it up as a part-time job, or was it related to your
Picked it up
school?
as a part-time job in the evening. And like I said, I'd had exposure to stick welding in high school, and that was about it. Everything I ever saw in the high school welding program, it was how to work on stuff on the farm. And like I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, by the time I was in high school, I was looking for ways out of the small town. And the first time I saw TIG welding, I kind of felt like someone had been keeping secrets. I was like, what is this mystical process no one ever talked about in high school? And I had a good friend there. Well, I made good friends with someone, Jay March. That was like the first guy that ever, was like, hey man, come over here. Let me show you something. He gave me his first Jackson fixed shade hood and kind of showed me the ropes and basically, would bust my balls constantly. But I mean, he taught me quite a bit there, and that was my first exposure. And the longer I sat in lectures and things like that at college, the quicker I realized that hands-on learning, doing things that I enjoy with my hands, it gave me this. Flipping my hood up and seeing a pallet of shiny parts done gave me the same feeling that playing music did once I got good enough at TIG welding. It was a skill that I could nurture, took time to develop. So it was something that actually
Challenging. Yeah.
Exactly. I don't find challenge in a classroom other than trying to keep my eyes open. It's not something that I know there's value in a classroom. And the older I get, the more I can actually sit there and absorb things. But when I was younger, everything I liked to do was fast paced, drums, sports, skateboarding, BMX, things that kept my ADD in check. You had to have enough focus on many things at once that you couldn't, it was enough to keep me going there. So
Everything
welding
was
was the only thing I found after high school that hit all those right things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, everything was like a dopamine rush.
Exactly. And I mean, it still is. Well, and it helps. I'll be perfectly honest. It helps to throw a hood on. It's like putting blinders on a horse.
Yeah.
I got right about enough bandwidth to concentrate on a 2x4 section of life at a time,
So, I find it interesting that you fell into TIG. Like, So like I've always thought this is something that I've actually struggled with in my life. Just I think about it all the time. I welded for like 10 years before I ever even had the opportunity to TIG. I was working in mining, I was working in manufacturing, agriculture. So you don't have these opportunities to work on TIG. Everything is like a thick wire flux core. You're running like 532nd stick electrodes, everything big and hot and heavy and dirty. And it wasn't until I left that company or a couple companies and then finally landed in a job where they were doing like stainless countertops. And it was like, oh, here's TIG, like, and you got to
Mm-hmm.
do work on gauge material and it had to be nice. And you learn about the differences in stainless and keeping the stickers on and all this, all this stuff that you got to do. But I mean, I was already in welding for a while and I don't run across a lot of people who are TIG welders unless they're Boilermakers. Like the Boilermakers, that's kind of their shtick. They
Uh-huh.
all kind of do some TIG. How did you land into TIG like right off the top, right at the beginning? Like what were they making? What was the products they were producing that would be TIG specific?
Well, I actually didn't land right in welding immediately. I started in the
Hmm.
polishing department,
Okay.
uh, and I got my taste of welding by a lot of times when you're mirror finishing stuff, you round the end off and stuff because you're taking so many passes on it.
Hmm.
So when they go to butt everything up and weld it, a lot of times when it would come back to the grinding department, guys would try to grind that out versus sending it back to the welder, grind a hole in it. And so once they grind in a hole in it, the real welders never wanted to fix anything. Let's say just give me a derelict machine back here. I'll do all the patchwork. So I learned how to patch, paper thin stuff that had been butchered by grinders and got decent enough doing it that way that I slowly worked myself into being able to rotate in and when the real welders were sick, I could fill in for them. Eventually,
Hmm.
somebody got hurt, and I took their spot after they had a rotator cuff surgery for 6 weeks. And that's, I never left the table after that. So I kind of snuck my way in there, luckily.
Hmm. And what kind
um,
of products were they building in
they
this
were
in this
making
company?
mostly at that time high-end store fixtures, um, Chico's. Let's see, who else would it was Urban Outfitters. Um, gosh,
Like
what was
department store stuff, right?
yeah, high-end stuff for like department stores in New York, Chicago, and LA.
Hmm.
And then a lot of the, what was it, Clark shoe risers, Michael Kors, different things like that. So everything was mirror finished, stainless steel, a lot of very flashy high-end stuff. So I mean, it was just all delicate TIG work
Hmm.
was the basis of what they were doing, with a little MIG. But I mean, there wasn't even anybody in there that stick welded. So my exposure to stick welding was either that very early on at age 10 with like a buzz box, or now that I'm working at the school, I get a lot of opportunity to stick. But I really hadn't seen it much over the 20 years of the different fabrication shops I worked at. You don't, a lot of thin gauge, most shop I worked at, 3/8 was a thick of material as you saw. A lot of the
Hmm.
structural stuff was being made to be faux structural. A storefront that looks like it's structural, but really it is just a bunch of flashy stuff glued onto the
Hmm.
front of something.
Yeah. So then, like you come into this industry and you get this work that's pretty niche. Like it's not very common. I mean, there's not a lot of places making these mirror polished TIG. This is a conversation I have with students all the time. Instagram loves to show color and pictures and pretty things, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Oh
TIG
yeah.
and TIG is color and pretty. So there's a lot of expectation. Like every student's like, I want to be a TIG welder. I want to go get a TIG welding job. And it's like, like where we live, our industry, it's you're going to be hard pressed to find much work for that. Like you may have to go somewhere else to find because there's not a lot of that. Is there a lot of TIG work? Did you ever have problems finding TIG work, or did you once you established kind of that TIG job after Buddy broke his shoulder, were you able to kind of maintain it?
I got very fortunate in this area, especially between St. Louis and Springfield. The closer you get to Springfield, there's quite a few really nice fishing lakes down there and a handful of boat manufacturers. So there's tons of aluminum work the further south you get. But between here and there, in this couple 100-mile stretch, there is tons of food grade stainless and pharmaceutical fabrication. So there's tons of, just right down the road from the school. Heat and Control is a building that, I mean, they just put up this massive building. I think there's probably 30 different TIG only welders in this entire shop that build nothing but giant stainless tumblers for just tumbling like potato chips and stuff like that. But I mean, they're awesome, mirror finished, look like concrete mixers and stuff, nothing but stainless TIG. So I mean, they're far and few between if you look at the jobscape as a whole across the nation. But I mean, there are definitely pockets throughout that, you know, St. Louis has got tons and tons of brewery history. You know, there's a lot of TIG work and all those brewing systems and things like that. So, I mean, it depends what area of the country you're in. But if you're looking for a TIG hotspot, I mean, there are areas of the industry that you could look into. But if you're looking to land that job immediately right out the door, I worked a lot of bullshit, pushed a lot of brooms, worked, you know, the first 3 years, half in the welding department, but mostly in the polishing department, just to where I could get my name out there. You know, with no training, that was the only way I had to go about it. You know, I didn't have any career center training, any tangible welding skills. So I had to kind of beg to get my foot in the door and stay somewhere in the beginning until I developed the skills that, you know, I could get a job elsewhere, you know.
Yeah, and you know that's so important for young people to hear and to listen to, and it's very relatable to a lot of people. I never went to school for welding either. I started off as a laborer, and I spent most of my time running the machines that everyone didn't want to run. So I'm running the saws, the chop saws, the deburring, the orbitals, like the cutting machines, the notchers, and the shear and the brake press, and then learning all these machines. And I wanted to weld because that looked like the coolest part of the job. I was just like, I was basically just a bitch to all these, you know, all the welders there and the fabricators, and I'm just making parts, or this wouldn't fit. They'd be like, go cut an inch off of that or whatever. But then, you know, down the road, when I became a fabricator and I got into like, okay, I'm like now working my way up into shops as a fabricator, knowing how to run all the tools on the floor well, it's so valuable.
There's a lot of value to all that bullshit grunt work that you
100%
had to do. Yeah.
And you know, that's the thing that you don't underestimate the work you're doing. Like even pushing a broom, people are like, I don't want to push a broom. Man, you know what? Keeping a clean shop is everything in welding. You get it as soon as the shop starts getting dirty, things start getting lost, people start tripping, people start getting hurt, things start to go bad, man.
And you get on the right job site, you know, I tell people this all the time, man, look at what you're making to push a broom right now. It's like, you should be grateful as shit. It's like, you know, they used to pay me, my first job, they paid me what, $4.25 to push a broom at McDonald's. And I was happy about that then. You know, be happy for what you have. And just because you're pushing a broom today, you know, I try to, especially with students just coming out of the school and stuff, I tell them, you know, if that's what your job that day, let everyone in that site know you're the best damn broom pusher there is, because it's not just your boss watching you. It's every other hand on that job site that's been there doing the same job you are, that you're probably making close to the same wage doing so. And they've been there and they've pushed that broom before. So they want to make sure that you're in there doing the same shit that they did to reach that level. You know what I mean? You've got to win everybody over.
Yeah, you do.
On a job site, you know.
All right. And you know, that's perfect little segue there to kind of your advancement now into the next stage. So we're going to take a break right now here on the CWB Association podcast. We'll have a little bit of commercials from our sponsors, and we'll be back right away here with Sean Flottmann. So don't go anywhere. And we're back here on the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron. Thanks so much for tuning in with us. We got a great conversation going on with Sean here, and we're talking about, you know, the leg work and the grunt work and the pushing the brooms and all the things you got to do to I guess plead your case as an employee that you're worth the time investment into training and that you're worth something to the company, you know.
I don't know, you may not have to do that anymore. The job market is pretty wild anymore. You know, I'm seeing all these signing bonuses. You know, we put together a job fair a few weeks back for American Welding Academy, and they were all these different companies were trying to say how attractive it is to work for them. It's like, that wasn't the case 10 years ago. You know, people weren't fighting over these employees. You know, it's a pretty cool situation to be in anymore. And I kind of feel like a lot of us got cheated. You know, there's a lot of these cherries being hung out there for the picking for all these random jobs that I don't feel like we ever had the opportunity for.
It's tricky because there's the cherry and then there's the person eating the cherry. So like for example, when we were coming up, there'd be one cherry and 30 of us fighting for it. But then when the guy gets the cherry, it's yours for life. You hold on to it. Now there's 30 cherries, and where does that leave you? Like I mean, like so now everyone's kind of getting all these cherries hung out, but doesn't mean who's good and who's bad, right? So then 5 years down the road, who's still a welder? I bet you that doesn't change.
Yeah.
I seen a statistic once that out of every 12 students that graduate school, only 4 are welders in 5 years. And I bet that's with or without cherries, because I think that's just like how you are in industry, how you like the job, how the job treats you, blah, 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 all that stuff that goes down. Because there's good work and there's bad work, man. I mean, sometimes
I've
people
been
just
I've
don't
been on
fit.
both sides of the fence.
Yeah. And sometimes it's your fault. Sometimes you fit. And then sometimes you don't. It's not the company's fault. Sometimes you just don't fit somewhere.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, for sure.
So, like you're coming up now. At what point did you start thinking about, taking pictures, showing your welds off? Because, like, you have an extensive social media, presence that I think everyone knows you as Dabs Wellington, which I don't even know where you got that name from, which I'm sure people have asked you. Explain it to me. I don't know what it Dabs I get. Wellington,
Well,
I think steaks.
it didn't start out as Dabs Wellington. I think it initially was like 311 Dabwell or something like that. And then I don't know. I was joking around with some people, and Beef Wellington came up. Dabs Wellington. I mean, it rolled off the tongue. So I mean, it was really just something very silly and goofy. But like I said, it rolled off the tongue nicely, and I already had the stickers that said Dabwell on it and everything. So I mean, it just kind of, it was a happy little accident, basically.
So you're saying you got stickers already. So at what point do you decide that okay, I'm gonna start taking pictures. I'm gonna start promoting myself as a welder or as a artist or both. Where in the journey did this come in outside of your normal everyday? You got to go weld and work.
I was working at Stork Fabricators, and somebody that worked there showed me a picture on Instagram. I was very late to the Instagram party, if you will.
Hmm.
I mean, I was on Facebook, but I basically just used that to share photos with family. Once I got on Facebook, once my daughter was born and everything, that was the only time I really got on the social media. But then I had a friend at work, I guess this would have been 6 years ago, show me a picture of, I was Aaron Nexus. At that time, he was one of the only guys I'd ever seen doing welded artwork, and I saw this and was, what the hell? So I started an Instagram account, and then just started following people, got on Weld Porn, Welder Nation, all the big pages at the time,
Hmm.
and just started liking everything that I could, and just started taking pictures of my own work. I started seeing stuff on there and was like, I
I
can
can
do
do that.
something that looks a lot like this,
Hmm.
and I mean, nothing materialized. That's, people always say, how did you acquire a following? How do you keep gaining followers? This, that, and the other. I'm genuinely posting my love affair for my daily activities, you know,
Hmm.
and I always have been. But the growth in the beginning was incredibly slow. Um, People think that there's like a magic trick to it or something. It's like learning how to weld. It's a day in and day out grind of something, but I'm just cataloging what I'm doing on a daily basis. So it's not like it's any extra work from what I'm already doing. So it's just kind of putting together a highlight reel of what I was already doing day to day. And I built somewhat of a name for myself locally as a talented welder by doing just that, by getting small bits of exposure at little events, working for different people, things like that here. Instagram is the same tool, just on a much larger scale. So it's kind of doing the exact same thing I was already doing. Once I started to see it grabbing traction a little bit, that's when I decided to go to my first Fab Tech, and that's when it really spurred all the momentum to really throw myself out there, just to, like I said, I'd been throwing myself out here locally, and things had been sticking somewhat. So
Mhm.
why not, if you want to catch more fish, throw more bait into the water. As
Yeah,
many
more
as
hooks.
many
Yeah.
lines in the water as possible. So that's kind of what my Instagram strategy was. And then of course that's, spurred off into TikTok and LinkedIn and basically any social network you can get on. I mean,
Mhm.
self-promotion is the most valuable tool that I've stumbled across aside from my welder. It's the only, I've been doing the same shit in my garage for the last 20 years. The only thing I've been doing differently for the last 5 is self-promotion,
Mhm.
you know?
Now, what, like when you were starting out, did you have any like really negative interactions? Did anything ever like really stick out as something bad that you put out there and it just didn't go well and you're like, damn it? Anything ever kind of try to throw you off your path of, like, I don't need this crap. I don't need the Instagram. I don't need this. I should just go back to welding. Or
No,
has it been pretty good all
no,
along?
there's plenty of negativity because you're dealing with people, but I just frankly don't care. I
Hmm.
didn't care as a younger man. I'm an older man. I've got a wife and a child. What someone says about me on the internet has absolutely no bearing with my life. So
Yeah.
honestly, you know, been I've been at this long enough that I've seen just about every kind of vile comment, hate, or anything like that. In the beginning, the only thing I ever got hate for was honestly welding with my daughter, which I thought was odd. Um, a lot of people wanted to interject their feelings of whether or not you should have a child in a shop, different things like that. Um, but anymore, you get negativity for anything and everything, but a lot of times it's senseless BS about the process, or I mean, it could be, it could be anything from what I'm wearing to, that my teeth aren't straight. So, I mean, you never know what you're going to get when you put yourself online. But I hate to break it to people. I've had these teeth, my nose, most of my physical attributes my entire life over them, right about middle school. So, I suggest people leave whatever comments, good, bad, or anything in between. I'm a grown up. I can handle it.
And then, in terms of your work, did you ever find that the social media maybe would interfere with work or cause any backlash with any of the places you work, or was it always
Oh,
well
it did
received?
for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't make my presence known whatsoever, and actually usually blocked most of the people I worked with. Anytime I get hired somewhere because I didn't want to convolute the two, and it's not like I walk into somewhere, I'm Debs Wellington, you know.
I
you
totally
know,
thought you would. No.
you know, I try to keep those two things separate. There was an understanding at my last employer before the school, but a lot of times I would film during my lunch, before work or after work. That's where I did a lot of my first handful of art pieces was on lunchtime there. But it wasn't hurting my productivity as long as I did it on lunchtime, before or after. They didn't see any, it kept me happy and made me more productive while I was at work. They did not see any problems with it. So,
Mhm.
they didn't necessarily condone it, but they didn't do it either. So,
And then when the people like your fellow coworkers, any of them be like, "Oh, here's Sean doing his art again,"
oh yeah,
or
yeah, and it definitely, well, that, and it doesn't, it makes some people feel bad whenever you're the new guy at the shop and your work is more recognizable than theirs, and it's not like I'm sitting down trying to make other people feel bad about their work, but
you just are the way you are.
some people don't like it when you come in there. And I'm not going to say I'm better than anyone, but I take my work incredibly seriously, and a lot of people don't. They don't take that much time and care under the hood. um, I don't go to work to mess around. I can play and have fun, but when I'm under the hood, I'm trying to accomplish something. I want to make sure that each weld is better than my last, and that doesn't happen by taking things lightly. So don't get me wrong, I'll have a lot of fun at the shop and everything, but I mean business when I'm under the hood.
Yeah. Yeah. And is there times when you want to relax off of that, or is it, or is every moment just like
Oh no, when I'm
Product
in my
on
shop,
point?
when I'm welding artwork, I'm having a very, very good time.
Good.
I've got my earbuds in, bobbing my head around, dancing to the music and everything. That's as close to a meditative state that I think I get in, because it's once the etching is done and it's just 2 or 3 hours of straight welding, it's just me in my little happy place,
Mhm.
where I don't really, it's kind of automatic to a point. I'm not really thinking about it. It's just kind of, I've been here before. I know what I'm doing. This is,
And
this is what I need to
is
do.
is there any are you competitive with your I guess art skill or art output? Like do you look online and be like, "Oh, I could do better than that," or you don't look at it that way? Because I know some welders are incredibly competitive and others not so much, like
If I'm side by side with someone, I get very competitive. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think just about any welder is, but online, it seems like a very poor pissing contest to get in.
Mhm.
And especially with the artwork, I like to look at it as everyone has developed their own signature. You could remove the names from everyone's page, whether it be their pipe welding page. I'm a big enough weld nerd that I can tell, by the step in their weld, by their heat signature, not just the torch and the different things in the photo. You can tell, by a welder's weld, it's their, you can look, I can scroll through there and immediately tell you when I see an Earl Jackson weave. You know what I mean? The guy is a freaking slayer, and he's one of the most stolen, pipe welder photos out there. And there's a lot of guys out there like that you can just look at their weld and see that signature. I like to appreciate their work for that because, we could sit here and argue all day long who can do what, this, that, and the other. I like to appreciate the work for what it is and the amount of time that, you know, each one of these individuals has put into it. Because
Mhm.
there's guys out there that are doing it that you've seen it doing it for 20 years, but then there's also guys that, there's some incredibly talented young hands out there that have only been doing it 2 or 3 years that are throwing beautiful work out there as well. So it's not, I don't like to compare because everyone's at a different place. It's, I just, how can I
Just
put
teach
it?
their own.
Yeah, I'd rather relate than compare.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
and there's a lot that all of us can learn from one another. And if people want to say they're better, they're worse, whatever, that's not my gig. you know
Yeah.
Now we
So,
can throw a hood on together and both throw down on some shit, and we can gladly do that face to face anytime.
yeah,
That is fun. you
that's the
know
fun part. Yeah.
yeah, that is fun. But talking shit online and saying you're better, it's like chest thumping. That's machismo bullshit.
Now, you talked about being able to recognize people's welds online. Do you spend a lot of time online, as part of your day, scrolling through welds? Do you spend a lot of time looking at other people's stuff, or do you just kind of put your own stuff? Like you got a wife, you got a kid, you got work,
I don't
like
spend as much time as I used to when I was a fabrication welder. Uh, but it is part of my job working with the school. I've got to make sure that there's a social media presence there with them. Obviously, I'm trying to keep my own social media presence up because I am still doing side work of my own and stuff like that. Um, but I try to keep it, I don't know, to a minimum, to a personal minimum. I'm sure my minimum and someone that is not actively involved with numerous business accounts, would have a completely different respect. But I try to I try to reply to the people that I can, but I'm not spending endless hours on there. But the people that I do follow on there, their work is so recognizable that it's not like you've got to sit there and study it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's there. There's some pretty signature welders out there that you can spot their work from across the room.
Mm.
Let's be completely honest. A craftsman that's put 20 years into something is a legitimate artist. You look at a painter that's, you can pick out any one of their works even though you've never necessarily seen one of them.
Mhm.
Just because you know their style. someone that's worked at something as long as a lot of these guys have. They have developed their own style, and it's not something that they did overnight, so it's pretty cool to be able to pick that out. Like I said, even if you haven't necessarily seen the photo, you've just seen the man's work before.
Mm-hmm. Now, what are you doing now? Like you've referenced to the school many times, American Welding Academy. Is that a fairly new trajectory for you? Like, how long have you been there? Because teaching's a whole nother game.
About a year.
Yeah, so this is pretty new.
Yeah. So the school's been open 2 years. I've been there a year, and I'm not really teaching there. I do some of the specialty TIG classes over the summer and then some of the winter breaks and things like that. But really, I am the boots on the ground or the tip of the spear. I'm going into the career centers and high schools, demoing welding with the students, and then just talking about future opportunities at American Welding Academy, and just working. Like this summer, I worked all the different fairs and things like that. So just out shaking hands, kissing babies, and spreading welding gospel,
So that just like an outreach officer almost, like, you're doing all the
Student
technical
outreach coordinator would be my official title.
Okay, cool. And then is that a full-time gig? You're there that's your 40 hours a week, or?
Yeah, well, I'm in the office usually Monday and Friday, and then usually traveling through the middle of the week. So
Yeah. And that keeps you busy?
oh yeah. Yeah, well, it's kind of been polar opposites. Last year, I took the job in a very strange time. The key part of my job here is booking into high schools and high school equivalent programs. So whenever I took that job last September, I took it full well knowing that it was going to be incredibly difficult to get into places like that. So I really started out having to Zoom a lot of the meetings and things like that. But then the travel slowly started to pick up. And then this year, it's been, there's varying levels of mandates and different things I have to adhere to, masks and different tests and things like that. But I've had a lot better luck steadily getting visits. And not only that, but field trips out to our school and things like that. That was the other problem. Not only could we not go out to other places, a lot of schools and teachers as well were not allowed to come to our facility, which is a big part. Especially seniors usually get a day off of school or two, to tour a college. Well, trade schools, it's the same exact thing. So it made the first year out, well, not only for the school, but for the outreach portion of it, it basically tied our hands. So it was very difficult, but it has led to quite an abundance of travel and work this year so far. So it's been kind of nice to see both sides of things here.
Yeah, everyone was probably just pent up, ready to finally get out and do some interactions.
Yeah. The first two career fairs that I worked last year, it reminded me of like a 6th or 7th grade dance, where everyone stood 9 feet away from each other, afraid to look at one another, and there was this awkward aura in the room, and there was usually 3 or 4 schools that showed up and about 20 empty tables because most of everybody canceled on it. I went to the first one in Perryville here this year, and it was like a feeding frenzy. It was just like, wave after wave of students. And I just, my booth and table were picked over, and all the other people that worked the event, and I spoke with them, they all said the same thing. Every event they've worked so far this year, it's just like people can't wait to get out. And, it's human nature. People want to get out and see one another and converse. And, a lot of these kids, especially the trades kids that couldn't get in there and actually physically do the things that they have their heart set on doing. It was a real bummer for them not having, the avenue to do anything other than just the bookwork portion of it. So that you got a lot of welding students from the last 18 months or so that unfortunately aren't going to get the same education that a lot of the predecessor students or the students that are coming along first and second year students this year are going to get a lot better, a lot more fairer shake, I should say.
Yeah, and I mean that's just the way it is, and then we can't complain about what happens on the planet, right? Like
Oh yeah,
things
yeah.
things
No,
are
I
the way
mean,
they are. Yeah, yeah. I
pe-
know some kids. I quit teaching to come work for the CWB full time right in the middle of COVID too. So I was like, what a weird time to pick a new career, but whatever, you know.
hey, but there's risk and reward to every gamble. I
Mhm.
knew that, I knew that whenever I took this jump, that it was a risky one, but if it worked, um, the way I saw it, it leveled the playing field for everyone. Not only our brand new school here, but everyone's school. The tricks that they had been using for however long were off the table. So it was
Yeah.
kind of a brand new hunt for everyone. So if I could figure out and get my legs about it this year, moving forward from here would just be easier. And I don't know if it's easier. It's testing my capabilities of keeping plates spinning for sure.
Now, because with your social media background and influence, do you do that for the college? Do they look at you to do some of their social media for for the college, or or you have nothing to do with that?
I'm running the social media page there as well.
Are you? Yeah, and how do you like doing
Yeah.
that?
Oh, I mean, same exact thing as my page. It's a chronicle of what we're doing there on a daily basis. So
Mhm.
it's just kind of run off of what I'm already doing. So it it
It's
just
fine.
it just it pans right out. And I mean, honestly, last year when I wasn't able to travel, I had to lean on that quite heavily. Um, to try to get some kind of outreach or impact when I physically couldn't get there. So I mean, it was a tool of a lot of value last year. Um, the presence isn't nearly as high this year now that I'm actually traveling nearly as much.
Mhm.
Um, but I I've got to be perfectly honest. Filming videos and stuff of the students and the instructors there is so much fun because I get all the angles of people welding that I wish I could get of myself. Is
Mhm.
it's like, man, this is perfect. It's like this is what I need.
You're gonna have to hire a student just to come film you in your garage.
There we go. That I'm gonna put my daughter to work. She'll be 12 this week, so I think I can finally get around all those pesky child labor laws.
There's no labor laws if it's for your family business.
Oh, perfect. Then I'm gonna have a talk with her lawyer.
So, like, end game now with where you are. Would you like to be an instructor? Would you like to move into that role and be a full-time teacher, or what are you thinking when you made this jump out of a shop to come work for the school as an outreach officer?
hmm
Are you thinking, like, what was the plan that you saw coming out of that move?
Well, I think that this position right now plays to all my strong suits the best.
Okay.
Um, you know, if I was going to be an instructor, I feel like I would need, and I've been working on this. I got my first stick cert uh, 6 months ago or something like that. So I am working on learning on the job. Left a lot of gaps in my training.
Yeah.
For sure. Like we spoke of the lack of stick welding. Just there's a lot of things I never had exposure to, and even some of the things that I did have exposure to and can physically do very well. I don't necessarily know all of the science behind it.
Hmm.
I mean, as far as machine settings and different things like that, I mean, I can walk you through that, no problem. But the actual science and physics behind the welding process, I feel like I need a little more education there. Um, so, I mean, being an instructor later down the road would probably be something that I would work towards. But right now, it's not the. I'm having a lot of fun when I'm doing. I get to be. Well, okay, I should say my favorite thing in the world to do is be someone's first TIG welding experience,
Yeah.
and I
Watch
get to.
the light bulb turn on.
Yeah, I get to do that. 30 to 60 times a week now. Um, because a lot of these high school programs, they don't have the financial means or the time to teach TIG welding, especially to ag students. The career
Mhm.
centers, they'll get to it possibly their first year, definitely their second year. But a lot of these ag programs, they don't have a TIG welder at the facility. So I bring all of this stuff there. And it's really cool because I was that student. I never got to experience that in high school. And if I wouldn't have randomly got placed by a temporary agency at a welding job, Lord knows what I'd be doing today. You know what I mean? So if I could be that spark that ignites that in someone, and they could, maybe start that focus 4 years earlier, not that my areas of study, band and black and white photography, were a waste, but if I would have been steered the direction of welding, which has consumed the bulk of my adult life, a little sooner, maybe I would have gone to a trade school, and had some different kinds of training. So you never know. But I enjoy what I do now. I get to travel. I spent the last 20 years of my life behind a welding table, so I get out and see a lot more than I have before, and meet a lot more people. So it's a really cool opportunity. And something I would have never guessed a welding job would have gotten me into this position. Well, I mean, most of the things for the last 5 years of my life, if you would have told me this stupid polishing job that I started at 20 years ago would have led me to this path, I would have told you were bonkers, but that's the cool thing about just kind of bouncing around and
and that's a beautiful story of the welding trades. At FabTech, you're sitting talking to all these people from all over North America and the world, and everyone's got these crazy stories, and they all just, I mean, me and Becker talk about this all the time. Like, I mean, he started, I think, when he was 16. I started when I was 17. It's like, who knew? Like, who had a clue, some dumb kid playing with fire is going to end up doing this stupid things. But it's like all the stories, it's amazing. Like, I mean, and props to the people that just are happy behind the table welding their whole lives. We need you, and we love you. The people that are building the tables and the cars and the planes, but then there's the people that branch out and do weird, crazy things, and it takes all of us, all the different types of welders out there to make the world go around.
Well, and I had passed on opportunities, before, and just never been at the right place, the right headspace, or the right decision for my family. This was one that worked out. You know what I mean? And Adam and I actually worked at that first welding job together 15 years ago. He worked there for, I don't know, maybe 6 months. I continued to work there for some time, and then he went off to start teaching. So he's been teaching the last 15 years. So when he opened this school, it was just an all-around perfect fit. Someone that I've had numerous experiences with, welded with, worked side by side with at a handful of different employers over the years and stuff. So it's just, it's cool to have worked alongside someone, underneath other people, bosses and everything, and then to, be part of the team that him and Rob have constructed. It's a very interesting experience, completely other side of the coin, still 100% welding related. It's like I've got to piece and pick the best parts of all previous jobs and assemble them all under one roof. It's very, very cool.
So tell me about the school. Where is it?
Union, Missouri.
Missouri.
Just, I don't know, 45 minutes west of St. Louis. So right in the heart of the Midwest.
Okay. And then how big is it? How many booths do they have available there?
25,000 square feet, 64 welding booths, teaching MIG, TIG, stick, flux core, carbon arc gouging. Everything is destructive bend tests. Everything is either AWS or ASME. And I mean, it's been, like I said, the first year, a little unusual with COVID and everything, but this last year, man, has been going like gangbusters. It's good. It's a lot of fun to see, a lot of smiling faces. Started to have some pretty decent relationships with quite a few of the local unions and different things, sheet metal, iron workers, boiler makers and stuff like that. So I mean, it takes a little while for relationships like those to build, for your students to get out there and actually prove to industry that the training they're receiving is what you're promising. But all of those things are starting to happen. And I mean, the job industry is hurting for wait staff, waitresses, and gas station attendants. It is incredibly suffering for talented, skilled, and, dedicated welders. So I mean, it is a perfect opportunity, and not just welders, HVAC,
All
any
trades, yeah.
plumbing, any kind of trade. There is such an abundance of jobs out there for students that, for 5 to 12 months, if they could dump 100% of themselves into a program, whether it be welding or any of the above, and start out making $50,000 to $70,000 a year with limited travel. And then if you're willing to travel for any of those jobs, you can easily break 6 figures. I mean, it's if you're a brilliant student and you do not mind classwork, I completely understand. Go to a 4-year university. But if you enjoy making things with your hands, there's no shame in it whatsoever. And plenty of people are making incredible livings for themselves, their families, and having tangible proof of their work on a daily basis.
Yeah, and you can end up in the same place. Like I went to school, I went to university with people that wanted to be teachers, and they're teachers today. When I went to university, I had this dream about being a teacher someday, and then ended up having to be a welder. And I say having to be a welder because it wasn't in the plan. Like I just all of a sudden, I needed a job, and I had a kid. I was really young. I needed to make as much money as I could, so I started welding. And it was the job I had to take for the best return for where I was. I live in a very industrial part of Canada, so there's lots of welding work. I've never ever been unemployed. So it's like, okay, that's the blessing. But then it's like, okay, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it the best I can. And then you start working your way through it. And then fast forward, I ended up being a teacher anyways. So it's like, it's not like you got to give up your dreams to to get into the trades. All those same things exist in the trades. There's just a different path, right?
Yeah. And then there's a lot of different directions you can go. A lot of traveling welders especially aren't going to be traveling welders forever.
No, God, no.
So it's a great way to get out there, make some immediate money, and save that money to where you've got a nest egg to fall back on. And a lot of these guys are coming home, starting their own business, or working for a local branch of who they traveled for, or continuing their education, getting a CWI, CWE, CWS. There is a lot of value behind a guy that has learned how to do everything and then can actually inspect from a point of knowledge, not just book knowledge. You know what I mean?
Experience. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the connections, the networking is so valuable in this industry. The people you meet, the things you run into, like you're working with someone that you've worked with over 15 years back and forth. People, the job I have right now was somebody I met 10 years ago, gave me a call and was like, "Hey, there's this job coming up." Like, it's like you just never know. If you make a good impression on people, work your ass off, do a good job, people remember you.
Yeah. That's why I don't understand. Well, I mean, I understand it from a certain perspective, but I never subscribe to that drag up mentality or the burn bridge mentality. You know what I mean? That I've had way too many instances, not just in my career, but in, many other instances in life where things come back around where it's like, boy, am I really glad that I bit my tongue on that one or something, because it's like, I could have really screwed the entire pooch on this whole situation by just not handling this situation the way that I had. So it's a very long life, so you never know where and when and how things are going to key back up around that next bend. So it's always best to just kind of put your best foot forward and always act like mama's watching.
Yeah. What's the plans now for the personal brand? Like what do your side hustles, the garage at the home, you got a good pace now. I see that you're always busy. So is there plans to grow that brand at all? Or like, I mean, you're sponsored, you got lots of good things going on. What's your vision there?
For the time being, I would like to continue to stay steady. Steady work, is good. It allows me to continue to do the extra fun little projects and stuff like that, So, I mean, I don't have any big goals. I would like to, do some more sculptures. and just different cool stuff like that. But whatever I have time to squeeze in. And fortunately enough, it's, a few art pieces a month still. So if I can continue to do that, that would be great. And then I'm working with a couple places locally to do some actual like signage for out front. So those will be some neater, bigger projects coming up this spring. Hopefully going to incorporate some flames and mirrors and fire with one of them. So that'll be kind of something new. So hopefully nothing blows up there. But I mean, with my spare time, I'm always looking to expand it. I've got a lot of irons in the fire currently. So if I can just keep that one going enough, that it's my, like I said, my fun evening and weekend oasis. But I've really got to keep my focus on the school and traveling and doing that. But I mean, honestly, doing the artwork more than 15 or 20 hours a week starts to get a little monotonous as well. It's really nice to have that escape every time that I'm under the hood now. I'm looking forward to that time. I'm never dreading hood time anymore. And whenever I was working 50 hours a week at other jobs and then having to come here and weld 20 hours a week still, there were a lot of times whenever I was doing what I look forward to the most,
It got long.
Enjoying it the least. So now it's like, man, when I'm there and present under that hood doing the artwork now, I'm invested in it 100%. And that's, I'm looking forward to it each and every time anymore.
So how does someone reach out to you if they want to get something commissioned, or do you just build what you want to build and then you sell it? Like, how does that work?
Most everything is commission anymore. Sometimes I do get a wild hair up my ass and do something and then just have to ruffle it off. But a lot of times it's, people that just DM me through Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or anything like that. Because I do have an Etsy page, but I usually don't put things up there for sale until someone has commissioned me to do it. So it's not really, there's not much of a gallery there or anything.
Yeah, I might have to get you something because I got an office that has no art and it's killing me. I need to put some stuff on the wall. I got a Canadian guy to do this cool little art piece for me, so I got to pick that up. But I'm always looking for more, so I might have to I might have to slide into your DMs.
There you go. Yeah, see, it's that easy.
All right. Well, we're coming up on the end of the interview here, man. I'd love to hear some advice from you in terms of, and I think this is maybe pretty much exactly what you do for a living, but let's say you're a small town kid just like yourself coming out of, Midwest US, and you're looking for opportunities, something that'll get you out of your town, or maybe even not, but just, you're looking for a good job, and you're thinking about welding, and what does Sean, the outreach officer, say to a young, high school kid in grade 11 or 12 who's looking for a little inspiration? What's the pitch that you give them?
If you see somebody in life that has what you want, ask them kindly how they got there, and then listen. Most of that sounds real easy, but anymore, a lot of kids aren't willing to listen. And people are willing to tell you exactly how they got there and things, but you got to listen. And it might take them a while to open up, but I'm blown away by a lot of these high schoolers and a lot of the ones that are from the small town ag programs. Whenever I walk in there and I see a freshman that's 13, maybe 14, and he says, this is what I want to be, and this is how I'm going to get there. And they got a plan laid out. Anything is possible for any of these students. I don't give a shit if they're from the smallest town out of Timbuktu or the biggest inner city. It does not matter. The ones that make it are the ones that have a game plan and they don't take no for an answer. You know what I mean? If you want something, it's out there for the taking. All you got to do is work for it. My path took a long time, a very long time. Most people would have given up. I worked at a lot of terrible jobs and a lot of places. But I never gave up. I always asked for overtime. I always asked for that next position. And eventually it paid off. There's a lot better ways to do it. But you're going to find that way out by asking other people how they got there. Don't just take my advice. Gather as much data as possible and develop your own plan of how you're going to reach that dream or that goal.
That's awesome advice. And it's true, because sometimes you you think people are gonna be angry or upset if you ask them like, oh, how do you get this job? But in my experience, you ask some of them old timers, they're more than willing to sit down and start telling you their story.
So man,
and,
I respect what you do. You look like you know what you're doing. How did you get here?
yeah, and
Yeah.
they'll open up.
Yeah. I appreciate it when someone admires the fact that they can see my work and they go, you didn't learn that overnight. And that's the biggest pat on the back from one professional to another. Said, man, you've developed that over some years. That took some work. And I can appreciate a bricklayer's work, a plumber's work, an electrician's work. I can look at some job they've done and tell you whether or not they enjoy what they do, whether it's the first time they've done it. That shows through in any trade. And a tradesman that's passionate about what he does is gonna tell you how he got there.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, at least.
No, and you're 100% right. Yeah, I agree with you all the way, buddy. I think that's 100% true. Are you going to be at Fab Tech in Atlanta?
Oh, I'm sure I will.
Awesome.
For sure, 100%. I didn't go to I'm not going to PRI, and I didn't go to SEMA, but Fab Tech I just cannot miss. Hopefully by next year I'll have a little more travel available through all the different shows and stuff. But this year I just decided to only do Fab Tech. So
yeah, you got a passport?
I do not, but I've got my live ID, so I can get one very easily again now that I think international travel is available again. So
I was gonna say Fab Tech Canada is coming up in 2022 up in Canada in Toronto. So
there we go.
I'll be there. I'm one of the hosts. So if you want to make the trip up to Fab Tech Canada, I'm sure I can help accommodate you. And
well, perfect. I'll have to look into that because I got all my proper paperwork and IDs ready for when international travel is allowed again. So
awesome. And then I will definitely be back in Atlanta. I'm trying to convince my boss to let me go to Mexico. Monterrey, Mexico sounds pretty good. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you being here. I love it, and I really appreciate your work and what you're doing in the industry. So, thanks for coming on the show.
No, thank you very much for having me. It was great meeting you at Fab Tech, and I'll look into seeing what I can do about coming up north for the Canadian one.
Yeah, it'd be awesome, man.
That sounds like fun.
Cool. And for all the listeners that have been tuning in, thanks so much for tuning in, and make sure you follow Dabs online. I'm sure most of you do. If you're listening to the show, odds are you're already there. But if by some chance you're not, follow them, and then make sure that you guys check out the American Welding Academy. Sounds like they got some cool stuff going on in the Midwest, and any school, any educational company or institution I fully support and endorse, because we all got to support each other in this big industry and help each other rise. So make sure you guys all stay connected out there, and until the next episode, make sure you guys stay tuned, and I'll talk to you then. Take care.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
You've been listening to the CWB Association Welding Podcast with Max Ceron. If you enjoyed what you heard today, rate our podcast and visit us at cwbassociation.org to learn more. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions or suggestions on what you'd like to learn about in the future. Produced by the CWB Group and presented by Max Ceron. This podcast serves to educate and connect the welding community. Please subscribe, and thank you for listening.